Greetings and salutations, it is I, Mr. Nothing, the museum curator of the weird and the strange and the host who might be the Magi, a wise man. Welcome back to Round of Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels throughout an $8 furnished apartment. I don't know if that's a lot or not back in 1905, but apparently, according to O. Henry, it is not. So, today it is Short Story Tuesday. A wonderful day for me to talk about the beautiful and unusual short stories that exist in the world. Today I want to talk about one that comes from a notable author who wrote about irony and hair and gold watches. I will be talking about The Gift of the Magi by O. Henry. For those that don't know, I feel like a lot of people would know who O. Henry is, based on the name, alone, and also the fact that it is a candy bar, I believe. But O. Henry, also known as William Porter, was an author in the late 1800s, early 1900s, who wrote a bunch of short stories. It's countless short stories. It's interesting because O. Henry seemed to write only short stories. He also wrote some nonfiction, and there are some letters and some essays that he got published. But he didn't write any longer form novels. And you think writing so much short fiction, he would eventually, go on to write longer fiction. But I guess that isn't the case. And maybe I'm just presuming that you start off with short stories, but a lot of people can be primarily short story writers and never move on. So that's probably my novel bias coming forth. O. Henry, one of the stories that he wrote was The Gift of the Magi, a very classic short story that is the example of irony that is taught to a lot of high schoolers, especially me. When I was a high school Mr. Nothing, they told me about this story. So very, very fun to read. I'll talk a little bit about it more. Something interesting about O. Henry is he died in the early 1900s of an enlarged heart. He was a noted alcoholic, and so that's unfortunate. But his work lived on even after his death, so he's got a little bit of a legacy there. So without further ado, let's talk about The Gift of the Magi. I will do a summary, a little analysis, and we will move on from there. So The Gift of the Magi focuses on Della and Jim, a poor married couple who have very little in their life to cling on to, and they live in an $8 furnished apartment. It said that multiple times. I don't know what that means necessarily because, I don't know what $8 got you in 1905 and whether that was a lot or if that was a little, but I think it was, probably a little if you were poor, but it was, a place to live, better than nothing, I guess. Della is in the process of crying as the story starts because she's had to sell her hair to pay for a watch chain for Jim because he has a gold watch. It's a family heirloom, and it means the world to Jim. Della's hair means the world to her. I think it's the one aspect of her life that she can't control, her own personal beauty, in a world where she doesn't have a lot of control because she's poor. So after coming home, she waits for Jim and prepares dinner, and then Jim shows up and is kind of surprised, taken aback to see that Della has cut her hair. And he reacts by sitting down next to her and being like, I appreciate the gesture of you cutting your hair as an act of love, but I had bought you these combs. And Della is taken aback by that. because they were very expensive combs that she saw in the store window, and she loved them. But now she has no hair. But luckily, she feels kind of happy that her hair is going to grow back. So she'll be able to use the comb. Unfortunately, Jim reveals to her that in order to do that, he sold his gold watch to pay for the comb. So now Della's gift is kind of useless because there's no watch to go along with it. But they sit down together and they reflect on their love. And the narrator ends the story by comparing them to the Magi and how in choosing their gifts and reflecting on their own love, that they're the wisest of us all. And that's where the story ends there. In terms of analysis, one of the big themes of this story is that love requires sacrifice. In particular, Della values her hair, but she realizes that in order to give Jim something that she wants, in order to express her love to him, she has to cut it off in order to give Jim his watch chain. And on the other hand, Jim, who values his watch dearly, it's a keepsake, it's a family heirloom, realizes that the only way to give Della what she wants, the combs, and to express his love, is to sell his gold watch. So they both make sacrifices, and in the end, it's funny that none of them get to use their gifts, but it's an expression of their love and how sometimes when you love someone, you have to give up something of your own in order to show to display that love, and I like how O. Henry does that there. Another interesting thing about the story is it's the textbook definition of irony, because you have two characters buying something for one another, having to give up something of value to them, and discovering that the other person bought a gift that was of value to them. So if you wanna have a basis for demonstrating what irony is to teenagers, you can show them Shakespeare, or you can show them O. Henry. This is a really clear example, and it's very unfortunate, but luckily it doesn't end on that unfortunate note. There's a feeling of hope coming out of the fact that they understand their love for one another, and there's not frustration that they had to give up what they wanted most in order to express that love. Another important thing about this story is the significance of the Magi and Jesus, because the narrator makes multiple references to the Magi and also baby Jesus, possibly indicating the reason for the season, that it's not about gifts or materialism. It's possible that this holiday, Christmas season, is about Jesus and how the wise men showed up and gave gifts to express their wisdom and also their love for the Savior of man. Not going one way or another there, but they didn't give him super special gifts. It was like gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And gold's pretty important, but they didn't give him a boatload of gold, so he wasn't rich. And the frankincense and myrrh, those might have had some value in the 2,000 years ago, but now they kind of don't have a significant value to them. So it doesn't really seem like they're that important, but they still represent the Magi's wisdom and the hope and love that they felt for the Savior of man. And I think that's what O. Henry is getting at, is that the gifts that we give to our loved ones on Christmas have to be representative of our love. And what's representative of their love is shaving your hair and selling a priceless family heirloom that you were going to use to buy, beloved gifts for that other person. So ultimately, Della and Jim are aware of each other's love. The last thing I'll note is one thing I didn't like the story. It's very short, and I think it could stand to be longer, but that's another issue entirely. I do think that it's too self-aware at times. At one point in the story, O. Henry, the narrator, notes that just drops the idea of the Magi, and is like, oh wait, this is going to be important later. just wait. And then they get to the end and they're like, oh, the Magi were wise, and Della and Jim are the wisest of us all. And it really seems like Henry is aware that he's trying to impart a wisdom on the rest of us, and he doesn't trust us enough to get that message on his own. He's like, oh, here's a message that I'm going to be trying to send you in case you're too stupid to be aware of that. It's not a big problem, but it does come off as, too self-aware and too ham-fisted, rather than, naturally moving towards there and letting us understand that that's the ultimate goal. And I feel like just titling the story "The Gift of the Magi" and excluding the specific addressing of the Magi in the story would have been enough, because then we could have just understood what the story was about without you specifically latching onto it. But that's beside the point, I guess. I guess I'm editing the story right now. So yeah, that was "The Gift of the Magi," a beautiful story about two people who love each other and the sacrifices they're willing to make during Christmas in order to express their love to one another. I recommend that you go out and find it so you can read it. It's a strong recommendation. It's a classic, and again, much like An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, it's obvious why it's a classic and why it stands the test of time. So yeah, it's in the public domain, so I'll put a link to it in the description. Go ahead and read it and tell me what you think about it in the comments, or if you want to comment on something that I said in my review, feel free to let me know what you think. I would love to hear from you and have a discussion about this interesting short story. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that we can get The Gift of the Magi out to the masses and spread some holiday cheer, a little irony holiday cheer on this upcoming holiday season. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at AroundTheWeird so that we can talk about fun, irony and short stories about Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa, and if they exist or not. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and irony-filled travels. Farewell.